Welcome into the Autzen Audibles Podcast. I'm Prehm and Erik Skopil on the show as always, and we're bringing in Ryan Burns of Gophers Illustrated, our sister site that covers the Minnesota Gophers for 24/7 Sports, to get you ready to go for this Friday night kickoff. Strange feeling, Friday night lights here at Autzen Stadium. Ryan, man, how's it going? How's the season covering along for the Gophers?
Yet another night game, which is the bane of my existence as someone who likes to cover games that are actually played during the day. This is going to be the sixth night game that I have covered so far. Look, I say this with the utmost peace and love to the Minnesota Golden Gophers. This is my 15th year covering the team. I'm used to at least 70% of the schedule being an 11 a.m. kick here in the Central Time Zone. So to have 6 in the first, I guess now 10 games, it's good. It's a little bit different, but that's where welcome to the new day and age where the TV overlords just run everything, and we're all happy to collect checks that way.
Yeah, this is what, Eric, Oregon's, not to poke you too much, but
I think this is their second
night game of the year.
That's crazy to me, especially with all the West Coast connections here, where you'd think in theory you guys would have more night games than I would here in the Central Time Zone.
We used to have them 4 or 5, in the Pac-12 days. You'd have 4 or 5 that started at 7:30. Your game started at 8 sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to do Pac-12 after dark earlier, where when Minnesota went out to Cal in September, that was like a 9:30 local time start. And when Minnesota ended up falling apart against the Golden Bears, that was after midnight. So I think, as we'll talk about today, it's been a very interesting route for the Golden Gophers to get to 6-3. They're 6-0 at home, 0-3 on the road. They've been either white hot, ice cold, no in between. So it's going to be fascinating to see, for me at least, what team shows up off a bye week.
Yeah, it kind of goes into my first question, Ryan, of just big picture here for a second. Just, you mentioned the record. They're in contention for a good bowl game. They're mathematically not out yet for the Big Ten championship. They'll need a lot of help, but they're not mathematically out yet. But what's kind of your read on this Minnesota team so far?
That's a great question, and one that I don't know that the answer is going to be one that the listeners love. It's been as difficult of a team to kind of nail down as I've covered in 15 years, because I can go through the stats, and I will, but that's not a great representation of the team that they've been, because it's either been they've played really well, they've played okay, or they've been at the 5th percentile. It's either 50th, 95th, or 5th, and that's drive to drive, game to game, quarter to quarter, half to half. And they've been able to get it done at home, 6-0 in that span, including beaten team. I mean, they're 4-0 in the Big Ten at home. But when they've gone on the road, they have forgotten to get off the bus. They've been outscored 110-20. It's something to where, they had to be the unfortunate victim for Ohio State in their homecoming game. They unfortunately also, when they went to Kinnick, I don't know that I've ever seen a Gopher team play so poorly in the first 20 minutes, where they get outscored 31-0 with an offensive touchdown. I mean, they gave up a special teams touchdown, a defensive touchdown, a couple anything that could go wrong in that game did. And then the Cal game, we talked about it after it went midnight local time here in the Central Time Zone. They didn't have much left in the tank, and JKS does what JKS seems to do, like he did at Louisville just this past weekend. So they've been banged up at spots on offense. They've been banged up at spots on defense. The guys I thought that were going to be really playing well this season, some of them have had, say, sophomore slumps, like a guy like Coy Parrish, one of their star safeties. But it's been a very interesting team where they have found ways to win, where if you look at, say, Bill Conley's win probability on this Sunday, I mean, I think about the Michigan State game they won just before their bye. And they had an 8% win probability if you just look at the stats. I mean, they were outgained by 200. I mean, it was an insane game that they blew, then came back, and then won in overtime. So they have found ways to win. How is Minnesota 6-3? They are as resilient of a team as I've seen at home, where they have found ways to win. Now, the question is, will that finally travel 2 time zones over on a Friday night?
I wanted to ask you about PJ Fleck. Oregon fans are, I think, fairly familiar as you could be with a coach who you haven't faced, in part because he was at one point, I think, in the discussion as a candidate a long time ago before he took the Minnesota job. Which blows my mind. He's been there 9 years and is the second longest
tenured coach behind Kirk Ferentz in the Big Ten now, which I asked Fleck about that in Big Ten Media Days, if he would have expected that, and he gave me an honest answer. That was, no, I did not. But he is still here. Oh, yeah. I remember that 9 years ago.
Stat.
Yeah, no kidding. So lay it on to me. What's it like covering a PJ Fleck program, and how has he elevated Minnesota? I'm somebody who has a family out in Minnesota. I've spent quite a bit of time there. They're kind of one of my programs that kind of I'm watching from afar for a long time, and this feels about as good of a run as there's been in my lifetime, at least. What's been kind of the key for PJ?
Yeah, I know there's a lot of Oregon fans who don't. It's interesting for me as just a bystander to see, say, Oregon Twitter have some thoughts and feelings about PJ Fleck. And I'll say this, as someone who covers him and has done a daily basis for now almost 9 years, he is authentic, he is real, but he is, I like to describe it, 5 Red Bulls all the time. And you're going to know within, say, 5 seconds of meeting the guy if you're going to love him or if you're going to hate him. Like, either kids want to run through a brick wall for him or they're going to want to run away from him. And for his kind of coaching style, that works here at Minnesota, is they buy into the whole row the boat culture thing. And that's why Minnesota has won as consistently as they have. They've won, I think, 7, 8 or more games in 4 of the last 5 seasons. They're sitting here 6-3. I'll be the first to tell you this 25 team is not his most talented. I mean, this is a team that lost 6 guys to 53-man rosters in the offseason, plus other guys that are on practice squads. Minnesota is a program that has to rebuild, not just reload with the Phil Knight money that is the Oregon Ducks and Dan Lanning. And trust me when I say I'm very envious of a program like that. So he is many different things, and I understand that some people still think it's a shtick, that, you know, he's got a lot of culture. He talks a lot about culture and elite this and row the boat that. I mean, he is who he is. Again, I just know what it's like when the recorder's off and you're sitting there with him, whether you're at a camp or whether you're sitting in his office. Like, he is who he is. He's authentic with it. And I know it's a lot for a lot of people. So that's the best way I want to describe it. It's not corny. It's a lot of things. It's not that. It's just 5 Red Bulls all the time. And for this program, he's also found ways to win.
You look at the quarterback. It's a hot topic across college football every year. It feels like Minnesota's got a more than promising young freshman quarterback in Drake Lindsey. Like, more than capable, rising star, maybe, if you want to throw that out. 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Just what's been your kind of read on him, and how much do they put on him being a freshman, or are they being conservative? Hey, let's not put him in too many difficult positions where the ball could get in jeopardy. What's just been your read on Drake Lindsey?
Outside of the Iowa game where he finally had his freshman moment, he has looked wise beyond his years. And the stats don't really do him justice because Minnesota's pass catchers have really struggled to get open consistently. They've struggled with contested catches. You look at the Pro Football Focus contested catch numbers. They've got the second worst contested catch percentage among all Big Ten teams. I mean, he is getting the ball where it needs to be. It's just not always being caught, or the guys aren't getting open. And Drake is a guy who, at 20 years old, is going to be starting his 10th game here on Friday night. And he has a lot on his plate. I mean, they allow him to make the checks at the line of scrimmage. They allow him to check things in the run game. They give him multiple play calls in the headset. I mean, this is an offensive coordinator from Minnesota and Greg Harbaugh, who loves to talk about Ben Johnson, loves to talk about Liam Cohen as 2 guys he really likes to watch in terms of NFL offensive coordinators. Now, I'd be the first to tell you, too, they don't have the horses here in this current 2025 offense to run. I think what Harbaugh wants to run, plus their best player in Darius Taylor, has missed significant amount of this season, and he is a question mark for Friday night. We'll see if he's back or not. But Drake is I think the best way I can describe him for those who want a playing style, he's like a 6'5", Big Ten, 90s quarterback. Big arm, not the most mobile guy in the world, even though he did win a a race to the pylon to beat Michigan State. They called a naked boot on 3rd and goal, and I don't think anybody was expecting that. And that's how they walk off the Michigan State Spartans and your folks, Jonathan Smith, out there. But yeah, Drake is going to be a very good player if Minnesota can retain him for the next couple of years. And he's going to be one of the players that I think as you watch the game Friday night, you're going to see he belongs on that field.
I wanted to ask you about the run game, and you touched on Darius Taylor, because I was, when I was doing my offseason scout, I was impressed by what the run game was going to be built on with Taylor. AJ Turner was a transfer from Marshall, who I think led the country in yards per carry. He had close to 1,000 yards a year ago. I know they had some young players they liked in the backfield, and yet because of injury, Taylor's, as you said, questionable this week, has hardly played this year. Turner played even less, I think knocked out in non-conference play. What's kind of the situation and status there? And can you give me a name check pronunciation on the freshman? Because that name looks really cool. And I think I need to be able to have some practice. Bail me out on that one. How do you say that?
I wish I could ask you the same thing about the entire Oregon defensive line, because my what I assume is a Polynesian descent for many of them is not great. I was able to get Sangapolatele by the end of the week, but I'm still struggling with many names on the Oregon defensive line. The Minnesota run game, Darius Taylor was supposed to be the feature back, but he has battled soft tissue injuries all year. The name that you're struggling with is Femi Ijiboy. So Femi Ijiboy is the enunciation for him. He's a kid out of Pennsylvania. But Darius Taylor's health has been the story of why Minnesota has gone from an offense that RTB doesn't stand for just row the boat in Minnesota. It's run the ball. And they did that for a lot of success during Fleck's tenure here with guys like Mo Ibrahim, Shannon Brooks, Rodney Smith, and even Darius. But Darius pulls up lame in the non-conference on the first series against Northwestern State with a soft tissue injury. He misses a month, comes back, plays a lot of football, or plays at least 4 a game. And then the first play against Iowa, or in the first quarter, I should say, suffers another injury. And Friday night's going to mark the 20-day mark. Now, I guess I'm optimistic that off the bye week, he's going to return, but he hasn't looked like the same player to me that he was last year when he played 13 consecutive games. I mean, without him, and then the number 2 back they were supposed to have, which is AJ Turner, who is one of the most explosive players in Group of 5 last year in terms of yards per carry wise. He tore his knee out in Berkeley. So I think I wrote this back to you, Eric, earlier this week, that some of it's, to me, if we want to be a little playful with it, it's the curse of the angry running back god for Minnesota in odd seasons where the Gophers aren't healthy here in 2025 in the running back room. They weren't in 2023 where they were on RB5 by mid-October. And then 2021, I wish it was the Bucky Irving season that got him on the radar of the Oregon Ducks. And the rest is obviously history. Bucky, one of my favorite players to cover here in the 1 year he was here, and now obviously a star with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well. So some of it is the running back, but I also would tell you the Minnesota moving company up front has struggled with knockback. Like, if you can't run into even boxes, so 6 defenders with 6 guys blocking, you're just not going to run the football in the Big Ten. I think Oregon had found that out at points last year, and I think they have rectified that with how elite that rushing offense is for the Oregon Ducks now. But the Gophers, and they lost most of their entire offensive line to graduation. Their right tackle from last year is now starting at Ohio State. So it's not just one thing. Some of it's health, some of it's knockback. But yeah, I don't expect to see Minnesota having a lot of success, even off a bye week, even if Darius Taylor is healthy, to be able to run the football.
Ryan, you talked about it earlier, the hot and cold mentality with this team. At home, they're averaging 32 points a game.
Mm-hmm.
On the road, it's 6. Now, they've scored 3 against Ohio State. I don't think that's, it's Ohio State. They're the best team in college football. They're secretly probably better than they were last season. A lot of people aren't talking about that. 3, though, at Iowa, 14 at California. How is this team not figured out life on the road? Is it simply just, hey, you're playing 3 teams that are bowl eligible, if not an Ohio State's standpoint, maybe the best team in the country by far.
Yep.
And that's just that, or are there other underlying issues? What's been the road deal here?
Yeah, that's an outstanding question, and one I've been trying to get my finger on the pulse of. I think, to me, the biggest reason of why is the Gopher offensive and defensive lines just have not traveled. And Ohio State is its own entity. Again, I'm being able to see them with my own two eyes. I'll be very curious to see how I believe they compare to Oregon, who I think it's a similar type of environment where the Gophers had to go in a nationally televised night game. And we'll see how the chips lie at about 11 p.m. here Central Time on Friday. But their offensive and defensive lines have just not shown up. And I think you look at why has Minnesota scored 20 points on the road. Some of it's because Ohio State's defense is great. Some of it's because Iowa's defense is great. But even the Cal game, I mean, they just could not match, I believe, the intensity of what I think Cal played really well that night. They deserve credit. But not being able to run the football, and then even you look at those stats on the road for Minnesota, the run defense stats actually look pretty decent. Why? Because opposing quarterbacks against the Gophers, when they travel on the road, are completing 70% of their passes with 7 touchdowns and no picks. I mean, they've been outscored by 90 points on the road, and the Gopher defense has yet to generate a takeaway in 3 road games. It's so tough for a team like Minnesota to win if you're either even or minus in the take give and you're not winning up front. And that's been almost the most fascinating part of this defense, specifically for Minnesota. They lead the Big Ten in sacks, both overall and in conference play, yet they have yet to force a takeaway on the road in 3 games. And in their last 3 games alone, they have yet to get a defensive takeaway. I'm talking interception, fumble recovery, not turnover on downs. So they have all this havoc around the quarterback, or these havoc plays behind the line of scrimmage with tackles for loss, yet the takeaways haven't been there. And now they have to travel to Eugene, where this Oregon team has only 2 giveaways as an offense, and I believe 5 home games. So it's not just one thing, but to me, it starts up front. Is if you're not going to bring the physicality on the road in the Big Ten, I think Oregon fans saw that last week. You look at Wisconsin being able to shock Washington at home. You look at Penn State taking Indiana to the wire too. I think, to me, there's 3 teams that are college football playoff ones in the Big Ten. That's Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State. I'd have a mini tier below them in Iowa. And then teams 5 through 18, it's like any given Saturday, if you don't want to show up physicality-wise, you're going to have a chance to be beat.
I wanted to ask you, you touched on something in there that I just wanted to get how they've gotten there, which is the havoc. 32 sacks this season. I was looking at PFF. I think they're 2nd or 3rd in pressures created in the conference. It's a group that has been really impactful. There's also a group that, if you look at just like the counting stats, has been really good against the opposing rush offenses. For the most part, Purdue got over 200 yards, which was, you can maybe explain what happened there to me. But in general, they've done a good job of, like, Nebraska, this like under 2 yards per carry. Good work in that game. What's when it's working, and you mentioned it on the road, and maybe it hasn't been quite as successful. Why has it worked? And just give me kind of a breakdown on Anthony Smith, because I'm curious on what you see there.
Yeah, Anthony Smith is the best player people haven't been talking about in the Big Ten. He is a defensive lineman from Minnesota who leads the Big Ten in tackles for loss per game. And he's also tied for number 1 in sacks. He is a powerful 6'6" defensive end who can really have his way most times. Now, he has struggled on the road going against these elite offensive lines that Iowa possesses, that Ohio State has. I think they're also able to give him more attention with a chip, whether that be with a tight end, whether that be with a running back. But he is a player to watch. That's number 00. I can assure you, you won't miss him on the field on Friday night. But the run defense, as much as it is when it's going well, they're tackling well in space. They've got a couple of linebackers in Maverick Baranowski and Devin Williams, who they get downhill pretty quickly. They're able to make tackles near the line of scrimmage. Where the Gophers get into trouble is when they start missing tackles. And they haven't played. I mean, you look at the run offenses that they've played. I think the only one in the top 8 in the Big Ten is Iowa. And Iowa was able to do what they wanted before it got to be 31-0 in Iowa City, and they kind of called off the dogs. So this is an Iowa rushing attack, or excuse me, an Oregon rushing attack that is one of the best in college football. I think they're number 3 in college football against Power 5 teams. And it's fascinating for me as an observer to look at the Oregon rushing attack and see that it's not just with one guy. It's with a trio of guys plus Dante Moore, as we saw last week down the left sideline there. He can also beat you with his legs. And they've got a little bit different flavor across the board, and they're the missed tackle kings. I think that's the stat I found this week was no Big Ten running back room has forced more missed tackles than the Oregon Ducks.
Yep.
And so that's for what is projected to be 48 degrees and a nice rainforest mist or light rain. I don't know what you kids on the West in the Pacific Northwest call whatever we're going to be experiencing on Friday night. That's where I can see a cleat going out here and then an Oregon Duck running for a very long time. So the Gophers have struggled with missed tackles at times, but when it's going well, it's 2nd and 7. When it's not, it's explosive plays. So largely the Gophers have stopped the run, but this is an Oregon rushing attack that they have not seen largely this season.
When you look at the matchup, stylistically, tempo, the talent on paper, what do you feel like the key for Minnesota keeping this game close or pulling off the upset is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, they've got to hit some explosive plays. I mean, you just got to empty the clip, because if you just go 11 on 11, you're not going to win, especially the Gopher offense versus this Oregon defense. Again, I got a lot of respect for what Dan Lanning and that Oregon front does. I know the Gopher coaches do too. I think Minnesota's offensive coordinator talked today about how he believes the Oregon defensive line is better than the Ohio State one that he played against just a few weeks ago. And they think 52 for Oregon is one of the best get-offs that, they've seen all season. And it's just across the board. He listed off the numbers. I won't do it here. I'm sure your listeners know the starting defensive line for the Ducks, but you have to get creative with this thing. Misdirection, trick plays, because even if Darius Taylor does go, and if he does go, I think you're going to see his pass catching ability. And that's one of the things that if I was Minnesota, that's how I would use him, is try to get him on the Oregon linebackers. Yeah, they're athletic, but I don't think Minnesota can win on the outside. So you got to empty the clip as an offensive kind of just scheme play calling. And then defensively, it's takeaways. They have yet to force a takeaway on the road. You have to get multiple. You don't win this game. You're not going to go in as a 25-point underdog and be even in the take give and win this game. There's just no way. There's not a possible way. You have to be at least +2, potentially +3. And as I talked about earlier, Oregon's only got 2 giveaways all season at home. That is. So it's a tough task. Minnesota 6-3. If they can find a way to stay in it, and whether it's the weather, whether it's they find a running game, you have to try and limit possessions in a game like this, even with how explosive Oregon's rushing attack is. I think they're also number 1 in college football in 20+ yard runs. That's a lot easier said than done. I'll be the first to admit that as someone who gets to watch it on Friday night. But limit possessions, get some takeaways. And then when you do get takeaways, you got to turn those into touchdowns and not field goals if you're going to pull the upset.
We're going to wrap this up here, Ryan, with just kind of the old-fashioned give me a prediction. I don't know if you've done the formulations in your mind. I'm not sure if all the data has come together and you've got a score, but where's your head at? What are you predicting for Friday?
Yeah, again, if this game was played at home, I would think 25 is way too much, because historically when Minnesota has played top 10 teams under PJ Fleck at home, they give them a run for their money and then some. They play exponentially better at home against top 10 teams than they do on the road. It's a team that's also 6-0 at home, 0-3 on the road, and we talked about how they've been outscored by 90 points. I know it's a short week for Oregon after a very physical game in cold, clammy conditions in Iowa City, and Minnesota gets a bye week to prepare. In theory, that should be a large advantage. I also know that in the 4 Friday night Big Ten games, it has not exactly gone well for the road team. Mm-hmm. They've been outscored by on average 12 points, and the home team in those Friday night 4 games is, I believe, averaging at least 32 points, and for an over-under at about, 44, 45. I don't know that I see that going under. So I've got this at a very Big Ten West gross kind of how did we get here score by the end of Friday night of 34-6. So it's like I think Oregon's going to find success on the ground. But if Minnesota can just start fast, I mean, the last time they played on the road, they had one of the worst starts you'll ever see, being down 31-0, 20 minutes into a game. You can't possibly play worse offensively, defensively, and special teams than they did in those first 20 minutes. I promise you of that. So can they start fast off a bye week when maybe Oregon, who is banged up, is licking their wounds a little bit, maybe looking ahead because this is a Gopher team that has played so poorly on the road. But ultimately, I do think the Ducks pull away because I don't know how Minnesota scores enough points if they don't get takeaways. If you tell Minnesota they have to line up every drive from the 25, they're just not going to score enough points. They need some help. This is an offense that is struggling. But so without takeaways, I think it's going to be a pretty good night to be an Oregon fan.
Here's Ryan Burns. You can read his work at Gopher Illustrated, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Ryan, thanks for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to hopefully touching base with you in the Autzen press box.
Yeah, let's hope the FAA overlords let me get out there to Eugene to see that beautiful stadium. I can't wait to get out there. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks, Ryan.